cha-cha, just a song at twilight when the lights are low. I've lost them up again. Come on, bring it up the big boy, Larry. There we go. Gullim up, you silly, idiotic fatheads. Bring it up there. The clutches are out there. Ridiculous layer. How about a show tonight about sex? Huh? I just thought of an idea for a show. Wouldn't it be great tonight if I said it? Huh? On the family station, you know? Silly whale. What'd you do with my coffee, you? Huh? Bring it in here. Where's my coffee? Kind of nuttiness. How do you expect me to work here without my... Bring my coffee in here! Man out loud. Get out of here, you bum. All right, let's get back to the real. Would you bring me a little of that sensual music on? Come on, Larry, bring it on big and strong. Hit it. Come on. That's it. Watch these knees move. Come on, bring it up there. Watch these gut muscles rippling like the sea at twilight. Woo-hoo! Bring it up big. Once again, the ethereal mystery of the sinister, many-colored lights of life in the Middle East is coming your way. You want to hear more about the Middle East tonight? Let me tell you, you reset that. We're going to need that. You know, some lady wrote to me a nutty note here, and she says, Shepard, she says, how is it that all that Middle Eastern Arabic music sounds the same? She says, they must have a very finely tuned ear to tell the difference between each one of the tunes. And I can only say to her, do you know that to the Arabic, all of our music sounds exactly the same? Have you ever tried to sit there and determine the subtle difference between one rock and roll tune and the next? It's almost totally, really, seriously, if you're more than 20 feet away from a radio, it sounds like you're listening to the same piece of junk. Goes on and on and on. And you know, that brings up just a little insight that I had one night. I'm lying in my sack. See, it's must have been about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I've got my little transistor radio on. And I'm in this town, which is not far from the Jordanian border. And it's on the edge of the Negev desert. And it's hot. And you can smell the peculiar smell of the Middle East. Which, yeah, it is now. It isn't what you think, the smell of the Middle East. No, you're thinking of the Lower East Side. That's something else. This is the Middle East. George of rotten minds. Well, the smell of the Middle East, though, is it's a peculiar smell. It's one that once you've smelled it, you can never forget it. And it isn't like any other smell. You can't fake it. Let's see what I could think closely resembles it. I think a large part of it is the Israeli cigarettes they smoke. The Arabic type of tobacco, which has a strange aroma that is somehow closely related to burning mattresses. It does. Oh yeah, it's a terrible smelling tobacco, awful stuff. That combined with moldy camel dung. Well, that's all part of it. Oh, this is the Middle East, you know. Baking sand, 45,000 years of Roman sandals that have decayed into dust. put this whole thing together, and you've got the smell of the Middle East, and it's unique. It has no other counterpart anywhere. And I'm lying in my sack, and that smell is coming in through the window, and the shades are sort of half drawn. There's a big heavy. The moon is so bright in the desert that you have to pull your shades down, or you can't go to sleep. Oh, they really have a moon there. It was full moon. Yeah, it's. In fact, when the moon is turned full blast, when they really turn it on in the Middle East. And they do it, of course, in the peak of the tourist season. They've got a big master switch there, and they turn this thing on. It's got a dimmer on it, and when they turn it on, really full blast, you know that you can get a sunburn from the moon? You really can. It's terrible. You got to wear shades and everything. And so the moon is up there blasting down, and I've got the shades sort of half drawn, and they have this, the Somerset Maugham type of shades they have all over the Middle East and the tropics, these wooden slat-like things. And above my sack is this big four-bladed fan. You've seen these movies starring Rita Hayworth and Peter Lorre and Humphrey Bogart. They're always in some place just a little bit east of Iran. Well, it's that kind of scene. The fan is going... And as the fan goes around, you can hear it hitting just a steady thump as it's hitting the larger horseflies as it revolves. This is part of the Middle East you don't hear much about. Oh, listen, they have bugs. Let me tell you, they have. You know that for 10 minutes I stopped one of them on the street and talked for about at least 10 minutes. I thought it was my guide, and it wasn't until later I realized this was just a particularly big horsefly that was just it was passing actually, and you meet him, and so this fan is going. I could hear thump, thump, and the bugs yelling and hollering, and the fan is whistling around, and I could smell the Middle East, and I've got my little transistor turned on. Of course, you can hear. I would recommend anybody who wants to travel, whoever gets a chance to travel, by all means, take your transistor radio with you. By the way, take an extra set of batteries, too. Because, boy, if you ever try to buy a 9-volt battery in a place like Lower Eilat, you will find not only will it cost you an arm and a leg, that when you put the doggone thing in, it's 4 years old and it's been dead for 2.5 years after you get it. So you've got and another thing, don't think that you're going to go over there and buy film when you're there. You know what a roll of color film costs in Israel, just in general? Roughly the equivalent of, if you're going to figure, to an Israeli, the money is about, can you imagine this, a roll of 35 millimeter, 36 exposure Kodachrome film, about $30. Hey, that sets you back on your heels when you go in. You go in, you say, "Give me 5 rolls," and the guy figures it out. He says, "That'll be $110." And you rock back. So there must be some mistake. I said, "Film." I didn't want that Leica you're wrapping it. In dollars, the money comes. Well, you can divide it by 3. The money comes to about $10 in U.S. dollars for a roll of color film, and that is a lot of money for a roll of film. Especially, when you're doing a lot of picture taking. So you better take film with you when you go over there. Well, I am lying in my sack, and that old fan is going, and I'm tuning around the dial, and I'm listening to these various radio shows coming in. And boy, I'll tell you, you hear the wildest stuff in the Middle East coming at you. First of all, about every 3 or 4 notches on the dial, you'll hear a jammer in action. You know what a jammer sounds like? We're not used to that. It's just like tuning across the dial here on your own radio. And say if WOR is, or whatever radio station you're listening to, WNAC, or you're listening to WMGM or something, if that station gets bugged at, say, a station that's 4 or 5 notches down the dial, and instead of going out and really doing a real good sales campaign and trying to get our rating going, we just jam the other station, it goes, you don't hear them, that's it. That's the quickest way to get yourself a rating, is to be the only game in town. And so you'll find all up and down the dial, you hear this, and way in the tiny background, you hear the sound of the station that they're jamming. I'll give you an idea what jamming is. Bring me a little of that music on there. We'll show you what it sounds like. It's something, it's right in the middle of the dial. It's about 5 of them, just laying right there and there as you tune your First you think your transistor's gone nutty. You think the radio's going bad. But it's like this. not easy to, it kind of louses up the ball game if you're trying to hear it through a giant neon sign. So I'm lying there, and I tune across the dial. And let me tell you one little bit of dialogue I heard. Now, there's a lot of programs that countries in that area broadcast in English. You see, the English is the second language there. And you go to Jordan, you go to Syria, you go to Iraq, you go to these. They all speak English pretty much. And that's kind of the second language. Now, all the other languages that they speak, which are their first languages, for example, in Israel, the first language, of course, is Hebrew. And the second language is English. And you'll hear an occasional English broadcast. But the English broadcast that most of these other stations do is almost purely for propaganda. They figure that there's a lot of English listeners, people around that are hearing this thing. And so I'm listening to this girl, and she is over there in Jordan. And and she's talking about Arabic music. And she says, very serious programs. There's not a laugh, boy, in 6 months of listening to these things unless you take the unconscious humor as the real humor. And I'm lying in the sack, and she is saying, she says, many Westerners, very precise English, and you can see she's learned it at a very good school, and she's very serious about her pronunciation. She says, many Westerners do not understand the subtleties of the various forms of Middle Eastern, Indian, and or Oriental music. The forms follow very closely a variation of the fugue, a variation of the cantata movements, and a variation of the basic symphonic structure. Now, the love song, or the ordinary popular song of the Arabic nations, and she goes on and on and on, explaining all this music about how the West should understand this fantastic stuff and should go along with it. And I'm sitting there, saying, yeah, that's right, yes, ancient, very good. Highly complex, yes, I understand that. Must attune my ear to new sounds, very good, yes. Must have open aesthetic possibilities to see new avenues of beauty, very good. And I'm listening to this, and this is a half-hour show. She talks on and on and on. I'm really interested in it. Now I say to myself, well, now we're going to get some of this stuff, see. And she stops and says, you are listening to Radio Jordan, the Hashemite Kingdom, broadcasting 24 hours a day. In one moment, our next program. This is the station break. Then there's another one. They have, all these stations have some kind of signature, like the musicals. You know, they don't do that anymore in America. Most stations today in America like vocal or oral signatures, like your friendly station, or where iron meets coal in the Monongahela Valley, that kind of stuff, or the action station. Well, now they're far more creative in many ways in these other countries. They realize that radio is an oral medium, and so they don't have station breaks that rely just on somebody saying, because they assume a lot of people won't understand the language. So one station will have a thing that goes, you'll hear a rooster crow, yeah, and you'll know what station you're listening to. Or you'll hear the sound of giant chimes going. That's the BBC. You know you're hearing Big Ben. That's it. Or you'll hear the sound of boom, the sound of a grenade going off, and that's the signature of a couple of countries over there. Just it's identifying marks. Well, nevertheless. You want to hear something about that? You want to hear about... No, stop. I saw it. Once is enough, honey. Twice is too much. 3 times you're fired. Okay? So I'm lying in the sack there, and she's finished her long dissertation on Arabic music. And she says, stay tuned for the next program. Boop. On comes the signature. I'm waiting. And in comes the same voice, this girl. She says, and now we present music as you like it. And I say, well, now we're going to get that. What do you think comes on? Are you ready for it? Elvis Presley. After all this talk about how we should listen to this great music, And it turns out she starts giving, this is the ironical part of it, she starts giving all of these dedications. And every last dedication is an Arab. For Muhammad El Saib to his girlfriend Fatima El Sahashuk, we are now playing Hound Dog. Gee, it's funny. You know, when you run into the reverse chauvinism that's going on in every country, for example, all throughout America, all the hippies are digging, say, Welsh folk songs. And they're digging Israeli folk songs. You go to Israel, and all the hippies are digging West Virginia folk songs. They couldn't care less about Israeli folk songs. As a matter of fact, I tried. It took me 3 days to get an Israeli to take me to a place where they were really singing Israeli folk. He said, "Are you a tourist? Do you want to? What are you doing? How to be a tourist?" And speaking of tourists and the fantastic trip of life, this is WOR AM and FM New York. Hit the button, will you, Larry?
The bright, clear taste in beer. Miller High Life, the champagne of bottled beer. That's Miller High Life. More recognize the traditional quality and heritage of an unequaled, unchanging, truly great beer. Wherever people are living better, you'll find Miller High Life in handy take-home cans, on tap, or in the familiar crystal clear bottles. Next time you want the very finest, ask for Miller High Life, the champagne of bottled beer. Sparkling, flavorful, distinctive.
This is the Fall of Rome hour. Let's see, we have a couple of little whoopies here. I see, Honda. Excuse me. I was going to dedicate this commercial to Barbara Streisand. This is a Honda commercial. We've got Honda, terrible, Fleischmann Honda. And they sell these fantastic motorcycles. And if you're planning, it's funny how many people are thinking of making the big step. But before you do that, it's very important to know where you're going. At least go to some place where they'll put you on the right motorcycle. In addition, teach you to ride it. That's kind of important. In fact, the people at Fleischmann will not only teach you to ride the thing, they'll see to it that you get insured. They'll make sure you've got the right machine. And Fleischmann Honda is located all throughout Long Island. Let's see, there's one in Long Beach, one in West Islip, one in Bayshore, one in Douglaston, Long Island, and there's one in Queens on Woodside, Queens, on Queens Boulevard. That's 1 mile west of Macy. And there's a whole line of Hondas, ranging all the way from little putt-putts all the way on up to the big competition machines. And it's one of the most highly respected motorcycles built anywhere in the world. They're recognized everywhere. They're beautiful machines. And personally, I drive a 305 Superhawk, which is a lot of motorcycle. This is a Honda. Okay, Fleischmann Honda. Now let's get on with, what do we have here? Rover? Speaking of a lot of machine, if you're thinking of making the big step and getting out of that tin can you're driving, I would like to recommend the Rover 2000 TC. By the way, for the benefit of Rover did not send me to Israel or the Middle East, and there's always about 9 klutzes who think every time you go somewhere you're getting it free, that Pepsi-Cola is sending you, or Coca-Cola or something. The galloping cynicism of our time knows no end. I have no connection with Rover other than I do a commercial for them occasionally on my radio show. Rover is not interested in sending me to the Negev desert to ride in a Rover next to King Solomon's mine, so forget it, Jack. The Rover 2000 TC is a magnificent car, one of the truly highly respected machines today, and by the way, is generally considered to be at least 5 years ahead of what's being built and what is driving around on the highways at this time. So if you buy a Rover, you are set for at least 5 years. As far as technical achievements are concerned, they're way ahead of them. This is the Rover 2000 TC. All right? Now, let's see. We have Miller, Rover, Honda. Oh, Limelight, yes. Tomorrow night I will be live, as big and fat and angry as a bird, at the Limelight tomorrow night. Well, all right, there's all kinds of birds, wise guy. I'm thinking of an angry bird. Kind of, it's terrible. Did I tell you about the great birds they've got in the Middle East? Some wild birds. I'll tell you about the one bird that I saw in this Yemenite restaurant. Well, that's another story. We'll go into this one. Oh, yeah. I saw a guy sitting down in a Yemenite restaurant. These are the sights that make you know that America is truly a foreign country to the rest of the world. I wish I had my Yemenite menu here. Yeah, the one that says sheep's bowels. That's good. It was great. They do it in tomato sauce. It's fantastic. Then you can order, they have on the menu, they have it all listed, very specific menu. For example, you can order spleen. You can order pancreas. I'm serious. You can order left or right kidney. It depends on, there's different tastes. There's left-wing kidneys. There's right-wing kidneys. You can order all kinds of things, which, because we do have a family audience, I will not go into it this time. However, I ask you to use your imagination. And they're served right there in the Yemenite restaurant. So it's a very big, exciting world. And we're going to do a little of that tomorrow night at the Limelight. By the way, Larry, do you think I'll be able to get away with wearing my tarbouche in the village tomorrow night? Yeah, I expect by tomorrow night my slave girl will have arrived. I've ordered one. I bought her in the Arab Bazaar in Nazareth. She's arriving. She's coming in duty free. You know the right people. So tomorrow night at the Limelight, from 10:30 until midnight. And if you can't make the scene, we'll be broadcast from there. This is a little thing we do. We make a little bow towards the station here. But we will be on the air. And if you're coming down tomorrow night, I suggest you get down a little early, because the really good stuff is going to happen early tomorrow night. Okay? Now, let's see. What else do we have? Merv? Oh, yes. No. Do you want me to mention that? I better. Yeah, I'm going to be on the Merv Griffin Show Monday night. So if you really want to see how sickening television can get, I'll be, and I mean it, there's one moment there, I'll be on the Merv Griffin Show Monday night. All right? Now, let's return to reality. Will you hit the gong there? That's it. Hit it. There we go. Very good. Bring it up there a little bit. That's it. Big enough, and down and out. Excellent. Set it back. You want to know one of the most disillusioning things that happened to me in the Middle East? I started to tell this story, and I never got around to finishing it, unfortunately. I'm in Beersheba. Now, Beersheba is, as I said earlier in the week, Beersheba is a desert city, and it was traditionally anyway, throughout the ages, the crossroads of the great caravans that moved crisscross the Negev, went down into Arabia and up into Persia and all the way up into India. And if you get your map out, you can see how Africa and Africa and Asia come together, kind of scrunched up there. And right there in the middle is this thing hanging down. There's Persia and there's Saudi Arabia and these places. And right in the long line, if you were to draw a line between Calcutta and try to draw it all the way down and try to move it down into Africa, you'd cut right across the Negev desert. Well, there's a little dot there that says Beersheba, and that was a famous oasis, crossroads. They had a wild Arabic market there. And you know when their market starts? Their market starts at 4 a.m. every Thursday. And even to this day, at 4 o'clock in the morning, every Thursday, the Bedouin tribes are all drifting around out there. One of the weirdest sights, really a genuinely weird sight, is to see a group of Bedouins. These guys are living like they must have lived 5,000 years ago, about. A group of Bedouins leading their camels and riding their horses on the move, moving across the Negev desert, and outlined against them, you see this fantastically modern, superbly designed hydroelectric plant. And they're just moving across, so they don't even see it. It's going right on through that desert. Well, they go through Beersheba, and every Thursday morning at 4 a.m., they meet in this big open place. It's just kind of a chunk of the desert that they've got sort of pegged out. And this is where the Bedouin market meets, and the Bedouins get together and they meet there. They drift in. You know the code of the nomadic Bedouin tribes. That is, it's a very complicated code, and one of the elements of the Bedouin code is this: because they do live such marginal existences, really very difficult to live in the desert. They are responsible for each other always, and so you attack one Bedouin, you're attacking the whole crowd. Did you know that, Lee? Oh yeah, absolutely. The Bedouin sheikhs are still there. They bear very little resemblance to the movie idea of them. They do not look really like Rudolph Valentino sitting in a Hollywood plastic tent with Lady Godiva on one knee. They really look, it's very difficult to describe them. You see them all huddled up in their little dark tent, and the camel is moving around outside, maybe 5 or 6 camels, and a herd of goats tended by 2 or 3 little tiny kids, little thin kids. The Arab generally is kind of small. You see these little kids, they're all wrapped up in the girl. Usually you can tell the girls because they always have what looks like a scarf wrapped up all the way around. You can just see their eyes. It's like they're almost in purdah at the age of 6 or 7, and they're walking around among the goats, and you see the camels moving on up the hillside, and there is that low, flat, black and brown and earth-colored tent, low, flat tent, and that's the Bedouin's. This is his house, his castle, and you see one little hole in it, and that's the doorway. And if you walk in a certain way, you can see huddled up in the corner. You see this white figure. It's long white robes. You see this white burnous, this tarbouche flowing down, and looking out at you from this dark opening is the Arab sheik. Or you may see furtively, just sort of skittering past it, you may see one of the women. The women are almost impossible to see. They're always kept away and hidden in the back of the tent. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, the Arabs gather at the marketplace in Beersheba. And the whole area is filled with camels. It's like the parking lot at the A&P. They've all brought, yeah, that's a fact. They've all come ridden in. You know, the Arab does not ride around on a jeep. His transportation is the camel. His transportation is also the Arabian horse. And so you'll see these Arabian horses, and you'll see this great big field full of camels at dawn, and the stars are still up, and and you hear this fantastic cacophony, this uproar of all this Arabic talk and about 6,000 different kinds of dialect, big hoopla, and this overpowering smell of sheep and goats, because this is what they're dealing in. They're dealing in sheep and goats. I saw one fantastic sight. I saw a guy, an Arab. I couldn't quite figure out what he was, but he was one of them, and he had this automobile. Where he got this thing, I have no idea, but it was a station wagon. It looked like a typical Chevrolet Country Squire type station wagon, with light baby blue with the fins on. The whole interior had been gutted. It was debauched, this car. Just the doors hanging loose on it, the windows cracked, and here was this typical American suburban station wagon in the middle of this insane marketplace in Beersheba, and it was filled with goats. And they were all looking, and this whole wild thing, and the springs were busted on it, and this guy came roaring up. Obviously, it was the fantastic pride of his life. And the goats, and all around are the camels and and always, invariably, when any of these people get together, particularly the Yemenites, you instantly hear this wild music break out. I saw a truck full of Yemenites. You can't describe how they look. They look really like what you consider gypsies. There's a look of the Spanish about them, kind of a wild, fascinating look. And they're all dancing in a circle. They're waiting to eat, and so their music is playing, and the drums are going, the people are roaring, and they just rush them right into the buses. Instantly, they're in the bus, and you hear coming from the bus, you hear how they ever managed to dance and yell and holler in a bus, I don't know. But the whole bus was rocking, and off it went down into the desert. And this was on a holiday, and that's why they were all taking a trip. It was a group of Yemenites going around the country on a tourist thing. And they were wilder than anything they were going to see themselves. And they all got out and looked at the Coke machine, and they were taking, a couple of them took a picture of it, you know, they were singing, and the drums started, and back they went into the bus, and off the bus went into the desert. And I said, wow. Well, Beersheba at that hour is at 4 in the morning, is this cacophony in that one spot, and people come down, of course, look at it. Westerners once in a while come down and look at the market, but it's a genuine market. It's not done for tourists, because it has been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. As far back as recorded history goes, this marketplace has been in operation, and it continues to this day. And it continues to trade in the same thing that it traded in. Hides, camel hides, the things that a Bedouin needs. He's constantly trading back and forth his weapons, because after all, he does live in the desert, and the desert is peopled with rattlesnakes and various, you know, they have wolves in the Negev. Did you know that? There are cougars in the Negev. There is a kind, they call them leopards. this Romanian guy who says, leopard. I said, you mean a leopard? He said, yeah, leopard. And so they have leopards. And all the Bedouins, of course, go armed. You'll find that they carry usually a dagger. They have 2 or 3 types of daggers. They have a working dagger, which is, you know, just when you meet an ordinary enemy. Then that's a working dagger. Then they have ceremonial daggers, you know, big silver with the inlaid handles and all that. And that's if you want to kill somebody close to you, like your mother-in-law or something. It's a very ceremonial type. And they have, you know, and so when you go to the bazaar, all the stuff is being traded in the clothing lot. And it was at this bazaar that I picked up my tarbouche. And great tarbouche, and I'll wear that down at the show if you want to see. Oh, I look fantastic in it, I'll tell you. Well, now, here is Beersheba at the crossroads. And here in the middle of Beersheba is this hotel, which is laying right out on the edge of the desert. Now, I arrive in the middle of the afternoon, and I take a look at this. What an exciting-looking place. Except for one thing. The hotel looks like a little bit of Las Vegas. And they're very proud of that somehow. They believe that Las Vegas is one of the more civilized spots in the world. And so here is Las Vegas. You have the vague feeling that they're replacing one kind of barbarism for another, you know. One is plastic, and the other happens to be made out of copper. So here's the little bit of Las Vegas called the Desert Inn, and it's all plastic, and it's got green glass all over, and it's got a plastic swimming pool out in the back, and it's got plastic deck chairs and the whole scene, and it's lying right in the desert, right in the middle of this waste. And about maybe 6.5 minutes away from it is the genuine Arab Bedouin crossroads of the world, meeting place and marketplace. And here's the Desert Inn, with the ceremonial Bedouins painted on the outside of it. You see, the phony Bedouins that look like they were done by Walt Disney. You know, cute Bedouins. And they're kind of looking funny. And right in the middle of this place, this kind of a U-shaped building, is a genuine Bedouin tent. It's a very eerie sight. It's as though you have arrived in front of the Waldorf and somebody has pitched in front of the Waldorf the tent of a roving band of Genghis Khan. Yeah, they put the tents right there, see? And there's a little sign inside the lobby. It says, be sure tonight to attend the show in the Bedouin's tent. And there's the Bedouin's tent out there. So I made my reservation, and I'm ready to go. I said, by George, here's where I'm going to see the real thing. The real thing. And so now it's 8 o'clock at night, and the elevators are going, and all the people are going out to the Bedouin's tent. And I walk out through this hot desert air. You walk out of the hotel, and it's hot. You feel that baked sand in the night. You can see the stars above you. And here's the Bedouin's tent lying there now in the moonlight. And in I go, and it's dark at first. These tents are very low and dark. You kind of duck your head down. It's a big tent, big flat tent. It must be 75 feet long and about maybe 40 feet across. Low tent. And that's the way the tents are out in the desert. You see them. They're about that size. Long, low, flat, hut-like looking tents with many poles, not just one pole, with many. They got the roof looks like it's scalloped, just and lays against the horizon. And there it is. You can smell the smell of the camel hair. You see, it's made out of camel fur. It's made out of goat hides and so on. The tent is, you see, all sewed together. That's why they get that mottled look, because there are many different types of hides all sewed together. There's goat, there's camel, and there's sheep. So it has a kind of camouflage, mottled look to it. And I duck my head and I go in, and here it takes about a minute and a half before your eyes get used to the darkness. And you see all around you see these low kind of, they're kind of like chaise lounges. They're low things upon which all banked around the sides and the corner. They have these big leather cushions. And this is the way the Arabs live. It's low, and they don't have the kind of seats we have. It's all low where the people lie. You've seen pictures of them where they lie down and they sort of lounge. The Arab knows how to live in his world. See, and they lounge and they look across, and you see these low blue lanterns hanging, the flickering light, and they're lit with kerosene. You see, low, and they have kind of a blue lens around it. You get the blue and the yellow lens. Wow! And you look around, and all these people are all lounging around the walls. It's the international set has gathered to sip of the insanely erotic delights of the Middle East, and I'm ready to go. I can see those shades glinting in those blue lights, Wowie. The show has not begun, and so I am led through the tent by this hooded Arab. He's bringing me through the tent. He's speaking Arab, and I'm going back to okay. And we sit down, lounge, really. I lounge down. I'm now up against a camel, a big camel pelt behind me. Oh, Shep has come all the way. And I light one of my sinister Middle Eastern cigarettes that I bought. And of course, what this does immediately is shrivels your lungs right down to your feet. I've got my shades on now. I want to look like, kind of like Humphrey Bogart on his day off. See, he's come down here to meet Peter Lorre. And they're going to exchange a few little bits of information because they're going to both go out and get Sidney Greenstreet in a half an hour. And Lauren Bacall will show up, see. And so I'm lounging, and I see all these other guys running with the white coats. Oh, you meet it. And there's about 500 nubile chicks who all look a little bit like Bridget Bardot's kid sister. Whew, boy. I'm ready, see. And I see the stage over there. I'm saying, oh, boy. In just a few moments, I am going to see the delights that will make this Midwestern mind real. Oh, this is it. This is what I've come for. I see that dark little stage and a few strange instruments lined up against that goat skin background, and the little flickering blue lights on it. And I can hear it in my mind already. I can hear those finger cymbals. I can see that writhing figure, that coppery figure picking up those flickering purple lights. I can see those muscles that human beings rarely ever have shown to the roaring public. The flashing eyes. I can smell the hashish rising, the opium. Bring it on. Stronger women. More subtle wines. Come on. I'm ready for it, see. Well, there is a slight stir among the assemblage, and I am aware, you can sense it in the air, like any time when you go to a show, you can sense it in the air that something is about to begin. And my Arab waiter comes over. He bows. He's scraped with olive oil, and he puts down before me a bowl of figs and a few dates, and believe it or not, a big long string of tropical Negev desert grapes. By George, grapes. This is just the beginning. Just the beginning. And I sip my drink, which turns out to be a watered scotch of an obscene variety. I sip my drink and I say, well, that's the way they drink it here in the Middle East. No doubt it contains some strange elixir that I do not yet know of. Yeah. And I take one of those plastic grapes. All right, I'm ready. And I sense the stir in the audience. It's about to happen. And then the curtain parts, and out step 3 guys right out of the Catskills, wearing sequin jackets. 3 guys, Manny, Mo, and Jack, and their rock and roll swing trio. They step out. One of them walks up to the microphone and says, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We want to welcome you to the Desert Inn. Want to welcome you to Bedouin's Tent. And now let's get underway. Let's go. It's time to swing. It's time to frug. It's time to rock and roll." Dun, 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 dun. Ooh, the next thing I know, I'm listening to the worst rock and roll I've heard this side of the action station. And these guys are wearing these sequin jackets. And I'm waiting for the show to begin. And then it hit me like a big bomb on the top of the head. This is the show. Oh, no. This is the show. And I sat there eating that plastic grape, sipping that obscene scotch, watching these 3 rock and roll guys. And were they bad rock and roll? I had the feeling that I'm looking at CCNY revisited. Holy smokes. And, and he finishes, "All right, folks, let's give the boys a great big hand. Let's give them a big hand. Let's give them..." And 2 or 3 languid-looking Arab chefs start applauding over the corner. They're loving it. And to add to the fantastic irony of it all, sitting next to them on the stage was a prop Arab. A real Arab. He's the sheik. He's sitting there and he's watching with glazed eyes these rock and roll musicians. These glazed eyes. He just sits there and he keeps smoking Luckies, watching this scene. And I wonder when they're going to start playing those strange instruments that I see behind them. And I recognize them for what they are. They're props. They're just props. And from outside, I could smell the scent of the desert wafting in, the real desert. And somewhere off in the distance, you can just feel the padded feet of camels moving toward the Moab Mountains. A few Bedouins riding easy in the saddle look over that long, flat plain, and they see the neon glow in the sky of the Bedouin tent. And they wonder what strange things go on in the mind of the Western man. And the stars shine, and the moon hangs like a great silver mirror over the changeless desert. And old Shep lounges there on his soft rubber foam, by the way, his foam rubber Arab seat, and waits for the next chapter to begin in man's upward climb. Keep your knees loose. Come into my tent. Come. I have delights. Come, Shahid. Come. I have delights that will send your mind reeling. We have wine, women, and song, and genuine rock and roll. Come.